You ever light a bonfire with your best friends, thinking it's going to be the best weekend of your year, and then someone calls 911 on you? That's exactly what happened at my lake cabin last summer. I had been planning the weekend for weeks. Life had been stressful, work was draining me, and I just needed a break. My lake cabin was my escape. It sat quietly at the edge of a private lake, surrounded by tall pines and soft earth. The kind of place where you could hear the wind breathe through the trees and see every single star at night. So I decided to invite a few close friends for a weekend getaway. No phones, no emails, just nature and good company. By Friday afternoon, they had arrived with their tents, sleeping bags, and enough snacks and drinks to last a small army. We set up camp just a few feet away from the lake, put on some music not too loud, just some calm acoustic tunes, and started a fire in the fire pit I had built myself a year ago. It was the kind of night you dream about, laughter echoing under the moonlight, smoke from the fire swirling upward, and fireflies dancing in the distance. We grilled burgers, told old stories, and even sang a few songs with someone strumming a guitar. But just when the mood felt perfect, everything turned. Around 9:30 p.m., we saw headlights weaving slowly down the gravel road that led to my cabin. We all looked at each other. I wasn't expecting anyone else. Then the flashing red and blue lights hit our faces. It was a sheriff's cruiser. An officer stepped out and walked toward us with a flashlight, his face neutral but alert. I walked up to greet him, a bit confused and definitely concerned. He asked who owned the property. I do, I told him, handing over my ID. He checked it, then said they'd received a 911 call about illegal camping and noise disturbances. I almost laughed. Illegal camping? On my own land? I politely explained that this was private property. I wasn't part of the HOA, and we weren't violating any city ordinances. We were just a group of adults enjoying a peaceful weekend. The officer nodded, looked around, and didn't see any reason to escalate. You're within your rights, he said. Just keep the music low and be mindful of your neighbors. He got back in his car and drove away. But then, we heard a voice, a sharp, screechy, unmistakable voice. You're disturbing the entire lake. She yelled from across the road. That was the first time most of my friends saw her in person. Karen, the HOA president from the community across the lake. She stood near the property line in a floral nightgown and slippers, pointing toward our tents like she had just caught burglars red-handed. This isn't a campground, she barked. This is a residential lake area. You can't just bring in strangers and disrupt our peace. I tried to stay calm. I explained, again, that my property wasn't under the HOA. It never had been. I had specifically bought the land years ago, because it gave me independence from the rules and power trips of neighborhood boards. Karen didn't care. She was the type who believed that if she could see something, she had the right to control it. I've already filed a formal complaint, she hissed, and don't be surprised if the county hears about this. My friends looked uncomfortable. A few of them offered to pack up and go home early, but I refused. I told them we were doing nothing wrong. We were respectful, quiet, and sober. Karen was just throwing a fit because she didn't like seeing people enjoy themselves on land she couldn't rule over. Still, her presence had put a damper on things. The laughter faded. The music was turned off. One friend even whispered, "Is she going to come back with more cops?" We stayed up for another hour, mostly in silence, just watching the fire burn low. Every now and then, we'd glance toward the trees, half expecting more headlights. By midnight, the next morning, everyone just as the sun was rising over the treetops and casting golden light across the lake, staring at the ceiling, outside with a coffee mug in hand, hoping to shake off the awkwardness of the night before. To ruin a weekend. The air was cool and fresh, and some music. Smoke from last night's bonfire still lingered faintly. Call my friends were slowly waking up in their tents, unzipping the flaps and stretching under the morning sky. It should have been a peaceful start to our day, but something immediately caught my eye movement near the edge of my property. A man in a black polo and khaki pants was standing by one of the cars, snapping photos of the license plate. At first, I thought maybe someone was lost or needed help. I walked over and asked, "Can I help you?" The man barely glanced at me and said he was documenting possible code violations on behalf of the My blood boiled. "This is private property," I said firmly. "I'm not part of the HOA. You have no right to be here. Leave." He didn't argue. He just nodded, put his phone away, and walked off, disappearing back toward the road. But I knew exactly who had sent him Karen. It wasn't enough for her to call 911 the night before. Now she was sending people to trespass on my land and try to intimidate my friends. I immediately called Karen's number, which I had saved from an earlier dispute years ago. When she picked up, she didn't even say hello, just launched right in. You had no right to bring that many people onto lake property, she snapped. You're making our neighborhood look like a trailer park. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. You have no authority over my land. You know that. You're not allowed to send people over here. That man was trespassing. Karen scoffed. If you continue to violate the spirit of the community, I'll escalate this. The sheriff may not care, but the county office will. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. But I was furious. This woman was on a mission to make my life miserable, just because I had dared to enjoy my own property in a way she didn't approve of. Throughout the weekend, she didn't let up. Every night, without fail, someone from her side of the lake would show up, either driving slowly past the entrance to my road, flying a drone overhead, or taking photos from across the water. One evening, we even noticed binoculars peeking through her upstairs window, aimed directly at us like we were some sort of criminal operation. Then came the formal complaints. I received 2 letters in the mail that week, both from the HOA's legal committee, which I didn't even belong to. The first accused me of violating community expectations of behavior near shared lake access. The second warned that further nuisance activity could result in intervention by county authorities. Both were laughable and had no legal standing. I called my lawyer just to confirm, and he assured me that my land was zoned for recreational use, with full rights to camp, host guests, and even hold events as long as they weren't commercial. Still, Karen's harassment was having an effect. One of my friends told me he wouldn't come back again, too much drama. Another asked if I was sure she wouldn't try something dangerous. It hurt. This place was supposed to be a haven, a place where I could escape the noise of the world. But somehow, Karen had turned it into a battlefield. She wasn't satisfied with rules, she needed control. And the worst part, no one in her HOA had the courage to stand up to her. I spoke with one of the residents I'd met years ago, a kind, older gentleman named Paul. He called me one evening, quietly apologizing for everything. She's always been this way, he said. Bullies people into silence. Most folks just avoid conflict. What about the HOA board? I asked. She is the board. He replied. No one even runs against her anymore. That explained a lot. Karen had been in power too long and had no one keeping her in check. And now, with me on the receiving end of her obsession, she was going full dictator mode. But things didn't stop there. A week after our camping trip, I returned to the cabin for a solo weekend, hoping for peace. I noticed something strange. Right away, trash scattered near the driveway, tire marks on the grass, and a broken fence post. It was subtle, but it was enough to send a message. I checked my security cameras, and sure enough, a car had pulled onto my land at 2 a.m. 2 nights prior. The plates were covered. I couldn't prove it was someone from the HOA, but the timing was suspicious. When I posted about the incident in a local community forum, just asking if anyone else had experienced trespassing, Karen responded almost instantly. Her comment, maybe if you respected the neighborhood more, you wouldn't attract trouble. That's when I knew this wasn't just about rules or noise. It was personal for her. She didn't like that I couldn't be controlled. She didn't like that my land was outside her reach. And she definitely didn't like that I was bringing people together without her permission. But what she didn't realize was that her obsession with control was about to backfire in the most spectacular way. Nature had its own plans. And karma was coming with thunder. A week later, everything changed, and not in the way Karen had expected. A storm had been brewing all afternoon. Thick gray clouds slowly rolled over the lake, casting long shadows over the water. The wind picked up, the leaves rustled violently, and the temperature dropped so quickly it felt like nature was holding its breath. I had come to the cabin alone this time, hoping for a quiet weekend to reset my mind after all the harassment and drama. As the first raindrops hit the roof, I sat by the window with a warm mug in my hands, watching the lake begin to ripple and swell. I'd lived near this lake long enough to know when a storm was serious. This one wasn't just a passing show, it was the kind that tested trees, tore down old structures, and reminded everyone just how powerless we are against nature. What I didn't realize at the time was that this storm would be the final chapter in Karen's reign of intimidation. As the rain intensified, I heard the wind howling through the trees, branches snapping in the distance, and water slapping hard against the shore. I stood by the window, staring across the lake at the massive structure she had spent years bragging about, her custom-built dock. It wasn't just a place to park her boat. It was a symbol of her authority. It had built-in lighting, a boat elevator, reinforced wooden planks, a luxury canopy, and multiple security cameras mounted like eyes watching the lake at all times. Karen would host her infamous HOA meetings on that dock, sipping wine while reminding others of the rules they needed to live by. And now, under the fury of the storm, that very dock looked like it was trembling. The waves were crashing harder against its supports, and one of the pylons looked slightly bent. I blinked, thinking maybe it was just the shadows. But then it happened. One loud crack pierced the sound of the rain. The dock jolted forward, then bent in the middle like it had suddenly gone soft. Another crack followed, louder this time, and I saw the wooden beams snap like twigs. The entire structure lurched to one side, dragging electrical wiring and dock lights with it, and then it collapsed, slowly at first, then violently, into the water. The canopy tore off and flew across the surface like a twisted metal sail. Boards, scattered like broken teeth. The boat lift snapped and vanished beneath the dark, churning water. I stood there in stunned silence. The entire collapse happened in less than 30 seconds. Karen's prized possession gone. Years of expensive upgrades, obsessive maintenance, and smug bragging all washed away in a single thunderstorm. And the best part, it had nothing to do with me. I didn't touch a thing. I didn't even step near it. Nature had done what no one else had the courage to do. It had put Karen in her place. The next morning, after the storm had passed and the sky turned clear blue again, I took a walk down to my dock with the camera. The air smelled of wet earth and pine. The lake had calmed, but debris floated everywhere. Parts of Karen's dock were scattered across the water like driftwood. I wasn't the only one watching. Several other residents had come out too, standing in small groups on their porches or docks, pointing and whispering, and then came the yelling. Karen's voice was unmistakable, even over the sound of lapping waves. She was screaming on the phone, her hair wild, standing at the edge of what was left of her property. Her hands were flailing as she barked orders at someone insurance, I guessed. Then she pointed across the water. At me. My phone buzzed later that afternoon. It was a voicemail from the sheriff's office. Apparently, Karen had filed a report claiming her dock had been sabotaged. She named me directly, said she believed I had damaged the structure in retaliation for her calling 911. I laughed out loud. I couldn't believe it. This woman had just watched her dock get demolished by a violent storm, witnessed by multiple people, and still had the audacity to blame me. I called my lawyer again and handed over the security footage from my cabin, which clearly showed the collapse during the height of the storm and, more importantly, showed that I was nowhere near it. The sheriff's office dismissed the claim within 2 days, but that wasn't even the worst of it for Karen. Her insurance company sent out an inspector. The report came back that the dock had long-term erosion damage and poor foundational maintenance. Apparently, she'd ignored several repair recommendations over the years in order to save money. The result, her claim was denied. The insurance wouldn't pay to rebuild the dock. The cost of repairs was estimated at nearly $2 million. And just like that, her precious symbol of power, the structure she used to host her HOA meetings and lord over the community, was gone. Unrecoverable. For the next week, Karen went into overdrive. She posted wild accusations in the local forums, claimed I had used acid or metal tools to weaken the dock supports, and even accused me of tampering with the shoreline. But no one was listening anymore. The footage didn't lie. The storm didn't lie. Her dock had fallen apart because she was too obsessed with controlling others and not focused enough on maintaining her own stuff. Karma had done its job. And even better, it had done it on camera. In the days following the dock collapse, something shifted in the entire lake community. Word spread quickly about what had happened. Not just that Karen's $2 million dock had crumbled into the water, but the way she reacted afterward. People had always whispered about her behavior, but now, her unhinged response was on full display. She wasn't just angry, she was unraveling. The more she tried to blame others, the more obvious it became that she had finally lost her grip on everything she'd controlled for years. Residents of the HOA started talking openly, some for the first time in years, anonymously at first, then publicly. Complaints started flooding their internal message boards. People shared their stories of how Karen had fined them for minor things, like leaving trash bins out too long, painting their porch the wrong shade of white, or letting their kids splash too loudly in the community pool. One woman admitted she'd been threatened with legal action for planting known HOA-approved flowers in her garden. Karen had bullied nearly everyone at some point, but with her dock destroyed and her credibility in shambles, the community no longer feared her. A petition began circulating to remove her from the HOA board entirely. I didn't start it, but I signed it, and so did over 60% of the residents within a week. At the emergency HOA meeting held shortly after, Karen tried to defend herself, blaming the weather, her insurance, and of course, me. But no one wanted to hear it anymore. Her voice, once sharp and commanding, now sounded shrill and desperate. She even tried to shout down an elderly man who politely questioned her leadership, which only made her look worse. That night, the board voted her out. She was officially removed as president, and for the first time in nearly 10 years, someone else took charge. Someone.com, respectful, and actually willing to listen to the community. Karen didn't take the loss well. Within days of being removed, she put her lake house up for sale. She couldn't stand living there without power, without fear to wield, and especially not while surrounded by people who had seen her downfall firsthand. Her house sat on the market for weeks, but word of her behavior had spread so widely that most buyers walked away the moment they learned who had lived there. Eventually, she had to lower the price by nearly 20% just to get someone interested. Meanwhile, my life changed for the better. With Karen gone, my weekends at the cabin became peaceful again. Friends returned. We rebuilt the fire pit, cleaned up the shoreline, and started hosting small get-togethers. Not loud parties, just good people, good food, and laughter under the stars. The same kind of thing that had once sent Karen into a frenzy. I even turned the experience into something bigger. What began as a joke among friends became an annual tradition. Camp Karen Free. Every summer, we now host a weekend event open to lake neighbors and old friends, celebrating community without drama, judgment, or control. We hang a banner, grill, all day, float on the lake, and swap stories by the fire. Even a few former HOA residents, people who had once feared crossing Karen, have started coming by. One of them, Paul, the kind gentleman who once warned me quietly, over the phone, showed up with a huge cooler of homemade lemonade and a big smile. He said, "This is what the lake was supposed to be about all along." And he was right. The beauty of the lake wasn't in the docks or the rules or even the property values. It was in the freedom, the stillness, the laughter of friends, and the ability to breathe. For the first time in years, the lake felt alive again, peaceful, welcoming, human. Karen's departure had been like a toxin leaving the body. Nature had done what no one dared to do, and in doing so, had cleared the way for healing. One afternoon, while cleaning up after one of our summer weekends, I spotted something washed up along the edge of my property. It was a piece of wood, warped and waterlogged, but still intact enough to recognize. It had once been part of Karen's dock, a fragment of the empire she had built to tower over the rest of us. I picked it up, looked at it for a moment, then decided to keep it not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Power built on fear never lasts. Control based on ego always crumbles. And karma, well, karma needs no permission. It just waits. And when the time is right, it delivers. These days, when I sit on my porch with a cold drink in hand, watching the sunset spread across the lake, I feel grateful. Not just because the drama is over, but because I got to witness something, a story where the bully lost, not through revenge or violence, but through the simple, unstoppable force of consequence. Nature didn't care who Karen was. The lake didn't care about her titles, her fines, or her HOA policies. It only cared that something was broken. And when the storm came, it simply corrected the imbalance. That's the thing about storms. They don't ask. They don't argue. They just come. And sometimes, that's exactly what the world needs. So here's to calm waters, clear skies, and weekends free from 911 calls. And to anyone dealing with their own Karen out there, just wait. The wind always shifts eventually.